Okay, hello. Welcome to part two of the making of the Proteus project that I'm working on. Part one, if you missed it, is a kit review and a bit of an intro to Fantastic Voyage, the movie, and the Proteus itself. And as discussed in that part, the biggest issue I had with this kit was the incorrect shape of the sort of upper deck section. So I took a deep breath and basically cut away those two panels. I basically drilled a hole out and then sort of started hacking away with an X-Acto knife to get some room to maneuver, and then scored along the edges, along the vertical edge, and then the top and bottom edge. And then I cut a line a little bit behind the seam where the window section goes in on the original one, which is included on this kit. You can kind of see it, but I basically came away from that a little bit, about 1/4 of an inch, and basically cut out those two holes. And then I got a piece of reasonably thick plastic card and basically super glued that. And because it's thin enough, it contours in the correct way. So it starts out straight at the back and then sort of concaves a little bit, and then almost sort of it becomes convex as it goes into the front. And then a lot of sanding, a lot of filler actually, almost like a plastering job to fill in the gaps and make that smooth, and then kind of sand that in, which you can see here. The edges are not sharp on the top of it. It's weird. On the underside, where the chunky bit at the back is, that's nice and sharp. But on the top surfaces, it's not sharp at all. All the edges are beveled. So I got some 1mm triangular Plastruct, which is really flexible, but very crisp. And I basically glued that with liquid cement along all of these seams, along the long edges, sort of midway up the hull and around the section at the back. So those were glued in place. Basically, it's an equilateral triangle, so it gives you a point, and then the flat end sticks to the beveled edge. There's a little bit of a gap there, so again, a lot more Humbrol filler sort of put in there and then sanded flush. Had to be careful sanding it to get those surfaces flat and not round off the sharp edge I'd just taken the trouble to put on. Again, that looks pretty good. It just feels more like the Proteus now, because it's a very clean, sharp shape, and this is now reflecting that a lot more. Checking some stuff around the front, and I noticed there's the sort of rim that goes around between the two sets of windows. Sort of continues a little bit past the windows into the hull. You can see it quite clearly in these pictures. Again, it wasn't something that was molded on the kit, which is a little bit disappointing. So I used another piece of the triangular Plastruct, basically wrapped that around the front, took it back as far as it goes. I haven't finished shaping it into place because it is quite subtle. But I will do that once I've got the rest of it primed, because I think literally coats of paint and that sort of stuff are going to have as much of an impact as sanding. So I want to make sure there's something left, but I don't want it to be too prominent. So we'll see how that goes. But again, that just adds a little bit more authenticity. So I started on the captain station per the instructions and realized that in order to glue everything in place, I needed to make sure my figure would be able to hold on to the controls and everything. So as we know, there are no figures included in the kit. So I'm making my own, and I've made Captain Owen's out of some cannibalized Airfix 1/32nd scale British soldiers, which means they are perfectly in scale with this kit, depending on the size of the actors. And I have actually researched that, and I didn't look up William Redfield because he's sitting down and he's already done. So anyway, he looks pretty good. I've got a collar with him, and then I'm going to work, sort of draw up some poses that kind of feel like the classic character poses of other figures, and again cannibalize those out of some appropriately scaled military record. Another thing, and I will show you progress on that when there is something worth looking at. It's a bit daunting. So the chairs The passenger chairs, as they call them, was the next thing I worked on. And I thought, okay, I'll just start building these. And interestingly, there are headrests that when they're preparing the ship, you see them sort of pull the chairs out and pull the headrests up into place. And the headrests are slightly smaller than the backs of the chairs and sit up from them. You don't get them molded as a separate piece. You basically just get the chair. The headrest is the wrong shape. It's too big and yeah, a little bit underwhelming. So I cut the top off. I used some plastic card, a couple of thick pieces, sanded it to shape, and then put the single strut in the back just to hold it up in sort of in-flight mode. So yeah, not a huge amount of work, but would have been nice had there been a little more attention to that from the people who made the kit. On the captain's chair, there's a sort of a headrest, and you see it in the film, and I'm sure much to the pain of Crookshank and the rest of the optical guys, it's transparent, which would of course have it with the blue screen. But in the kit, it's not molded as a clear piece, it's molded as a regular piece, which is odd because there are quite a few transparent pieces and they probably could have done that as a transparent piece quite easily. So I haven't figured out what I'm going to do with that yet. I'll probably take this one and see if I can just cast it, make a quick mold and cast it in clear resin, because if only to pay tribute to the optical people who worked on this, we should replicate that as closely as possible, because I'm sure it was a pain back in 1966. A few more things that I haven't addressed on here. I've taken off the snorkel, hexagonal thing behind the dome that houses the snorkel. I cut that off because it was very thick. It's very thick in the moulding of it, and something looks wrong to me about the way the back sort of goes down and at an angle and out. It's really hard to see on the film, but something tells me, I've seen pictures somewhere where the back end of it is vertical. It's a straight line. And doesn't sort of match the angle of the back. I need to double check that. I cut that off because I just didn't like how thick it was in the first place. Maybe a little bit cavalier, and I'll eat my words, but go back to that. Hopefully for the next video I'll have a lot of the interior done and in place, and maybe a figure or two in there. And yeah, but it's coming along. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll see you soon. Okay, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.